Hey guys, this is Charles Yeager for PremiumBeat.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the process of getting a fast FAA airspace authorization, which will allow you to fly your drone at a location near an airport. And we'll be doing all of this through the FAA's new LANCE program for Part 107 drone pilots. So this tutorial is geared toward drone pilots with a Part 107 license, which is another way of saying commercial drone pilot. But even if you're not a Part 107 licensed pilot, you still may find a lot of these insights useful. A lot of you may already know that the FAA requires pilots to get an airspace authorization if they're going to fly within 5 miles of any airport. In layman's terms, you need the FAA to approve your flight before you fly near an airport. This is because Part 107 pilots are allowed to fly in Class G airspace. And the airspace around airports is usually going to be Class E or D, or even higher if it's near a larger airport. At first, this doesn't sound like much of a problem until you start looking at airspace maps near larger towns and cities. Most of them have medium and small airports scattered all throughout, so a lot of the airspace requires FAA approval before you can actually fly in it. And the traditional FAA airspace authorization process takes a recommended 90 to 120 days to maybe get approval for your request. And I personally have had airspace authorizations take much longer than that. Luckily though, that's all recently changed with the new FAA LANCE program. LANCE stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. And again, in layman's terms, this is a partnership between the FAA and drone service suppliers. And what the LANCE system allows Part 107 drone pilots to do is quickly check if the area they want to fly in is available for instant FAA airspace authorization approval. Yes, you heard that correctly, instant drone flight approval. No more waiting months to hear back from the FAA. This can be really handy if you get a client request to fly to a location near an airport. You can check that location on the FAA UAS facility map and see if that area has instant approval available. Alright, so all that might sound amazing, but let's actually walk through the process of getting an instant approval with the new LANCE program. Again, this is only for Part 107 licensed pilots. So the first thing you want to check is the FAA UAS facility map. This is a really handy reference map that can let you know immediately if instant approval is available for your flight location. The actual web address for this map is really long, so I've created a bit.ly version you can see here. You can also find a link for the map on the blog post for this tutorial on PremiumBeat.com, so make sure you check that out. So once we get on the website for the FAA UAS facility map, you're going to see the United States, and you're going to see quite a few different green and red splotches all over this. And what those really signify, those are different airports. And the ones that are in green are already integrated into the LANCE program, and the ones that are in red, I've currently not integrated into LANCE just yet, but they should be doing that over the next year or so. But the ones with green, we are eligible for instant approval. So let's just zoom in here a little bit closer. We're going to zoom into Arkansas. And you can see some airports we have here. The green are currently in the LANCE program and the red have not just yet. And if we look around here, you'll see some of the other airports in some of the other states. It is kind of split fairly 50-50. It seems to kind of favor a little bit northern airports in the northern US. There seem to be more of those that have been integrated into it. As you can see here, quite a few of these are in the green. Let's zoom back down here. Let's look at Harrison, Arkansas. And when I zoom in here closer to the Harrison airport, you're going to see we have this grid that pops up, and you can see these different numbers that are in these boxes, and they're kind of surrounding the airport. You can see Boone County Airport right there. And because it's in green, we know we are eligible for instant approval to fly near the airport, but you can see the different number of values that signify how high we could fly in that area and still get instant approval. So you can see immediately around the airport, those are all going to be 0. And those are typically going to be really close to the airport, probably within a mile radius. And for most of us, you won't be really needing to fly that close to the airport. But over here, we can see the Harrison downtown area, and that might be a place where I would need to fly. And you can see it has 100 right there in the center of that box. I'll just zoom in a little closer. And what this tells me is I could file for an airspace authorization in this area here up to 100 feet, and that would be eligible for instant approval. And you can see this box over here right next to it actually has 200, and I could actually fly up to 200 there if I requested to fly up to 200. But for a lot of shoots, I typically don't even need to go over 100 feet. It's really just about getting the drone kind of up in the air for an air perspective. So 100 feet in this location here should be just fine for me. Now, if you do need to fly in an area in a LANCE approved airport that is in the 0 here, we're going to cover that a little bit later in the tutorial. What that really means, though, I'll just kind of give you the short of that, is you won't be eligible for instant approval, but you should be able to get approval to fly up to 100 feet, probably in about a week's time, and that's still a lot better than waiting the 90 or 120 days as it was in the past, which you typically wouldn't even get approved in anyway. But today we're going to get a Lance approval for flying in this area here up to 100 feet. And again, we're going to walk through that process. I'm going to zoom out here just for a second though. Let's go over here to some of these other airports. Let's go up here to the Branson Airport. And you can see it is in red. I just want to kind of show you what this looks like if Lance isn't approved. You'll still see the same number values in there, which is kind of a good indicator where you can get an idea once they do get approved into the Lance system. But again, if it is in red, it is not available for instant approval with Lance just yet. Once you've located where you want to fly on the FAA UAS facility map, we now need to go through one of the Lance service suppliers in order to get our approval. This is just a fancy way of saying that now we need to go to a website or an app that works with Lance and get our approval processed. As of right now, there's already 14 approved Lance service suppliers. All of these, to my knowledge, are also free to use. I do want to note that 9 of these suppliers on this list just got approved, so they may not have Lance fully set up just yet. And one of those is actually DJI, so there's a high probability that in the future, you'll be able to get Lance approvals right inside of the DJI Go app. But that isn't set up just yet, and we want to use a service that allows us to get our approval right now. And the service I recommend is Skyward. The website is skyward.io. And I also prefer to do this process on a desktop. It's just going to be much easier to manage than trying to do it on an app at this time. All right, so now we're on the Skyward.io website. And what we need to do first is come up here to get started. Go ahead and click that. And you'll need to create a free account on here. And I'll go ahead and scroll down here and you can see if you're looking for a free pilot account, go ahead and click that and go ahead and sign up and create an account. Creating your account's pretty straightforward. Just fill out this information and then go ahead and click sign up. Then once you've done that, you can go ahead and return to the Skyward.io website and just go ahead and sign in. And from there, you'll see a nice user interface with various information that you may have filled in. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and file for that instant approval. So the first thing we need to go to is up here to map. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And what this is going to allow us to do is mark off the area that we actually want to fly in. So I'm going to come over here to the magnifying glass here and I'm going to type in Harrison, Arkansas, because that's where we're looking at on the FAA facility map. And that's going to quickly jump to Harrison, Arkansas on the map. And we can see there is some controlled airspace here. That's what this yellow signifies. You can see the legend over here. You can toggle that down. That'll give you some more information on that. But we know that we can fly up to 100 feet in this area based off that FAA UAS facility map we looked at before. So I'm just going to zoom in here to the town square where I want to fly. So now I need to mark off the flight area. And an easy way to do that, you'll see this little pin right here. You can see it says draw flight area. I'm going to click that. Then we have a few different options you can use to draw the flight area. I'm just going to use the square. And I'm just going to drag this over kind of an area where I think my flight's going to kind of be contained inside of. And when I do that, it's going to ask me to save this flight area by naming it. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this a name. I'm just going to call this Harrison Tutorial Flight. And then I'm just going to click Save. Now once we've done that, we can come back over here to Plan. I'm going to click that again. And this is going to allow us to create our operation, which is another way of just saying our flight. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to give this operation a name, and I'll just call this the Harrison Tutorial Flight. Next we have the date and time, so I'm just going to go ahead and input this now. Click on the calendar here, and we'll just go ahead and say that this flight's going to take place a few days from now on the 16th. And I'll go ahead and say we'll start this flight at 8 o'clock. And this is military time, so you have hours, minutes, and seconds. And I'll go ahead and say 2. We'll also do it on the 16th. And I'll set this time to be 10 a.m. So we have a 2-hour flight, and this gives you a nice indicator here. Time on site is 2 hours. And you can then fill in this other information if you would want to. I might select this, say that I am going to be the pilot in command. Now we need to select the flight area, and we can link this to the map area we selected earlier. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to click Save up here. And that's just going to save that information. Now let's go ahead and select the flight area. Now this will bring us back to the map, but if you look over here, we have this saved flight areas, and you can see it says Harrison Tutorial Flight. And I'll just go ahead and toggle this down, and I want to attach this to our current operation. So I'll select that. And now you can see this is going to load, and now we can see that area right here. And there's some key information down here. You're going to see we have a maximum altitude here of 100 feet. and it allows us to request how high we want to fly. And obviously I'd recommend setting this to either be 100 feet or lower if you want to get that instant approval. If I did type in 200 here, it would require a longer approval time, maybe about a week or so again. But again, if we set this at 100 or lower, because of what this says here and because of what we saw on that first FAA UAS facility map, we know we can get instant approval up to 100 feet. And really that's as simple and as easy as it is to do this. What we need to do now is it says we have FAA authorization required. So in order to fly here, we need to obtain an authorization from the FAA, and we can go ahead and immediately request that authorization. So when I click that, you're gonna see this is gonna pop up a notification of intended use. It's gonna lay out some rules, make sure you're following the Part 107 guidelines. I'm gonna go ahead and agree to those conditions and click agree. And immediately when we do that, we're gonna get a notice of authorization with all this information that we can print out that now allows us to fly at that area during that time period we requested. And the key thing here is you're gonna see we have an FAA reference number. And it's important to know that because we have this reference number, we are approved. Sometimes you may see a notice of authorization like this, and it won't have a reference number just yet. So don't be confused if this pops up and you don't have a reference number. That just means they're taking a little more time to approve your request. But again, in this case, ours was approved instantly, so you can go ahead and print or close this. So I'll just close that. And you can see down here, if we look, we have the option to view that authorization again, and we can see we are FAA approved here for that flight, or we can cancel it if we would like. There's also some other cool information on here, such as the weather for the time period that we're gonna be flying in. And so that's pretty handy to look at as well. Now let's say you closed out of this and you wanted to come back and reference it later. What you can do is come up here to the Manage tab, and then come down here to Operations. And then we can see that operation that we created. So then you could come back to this, you could select it, and you could pull up all of your information again and just reference back to it. Finally, before I leave you, I do want to show you what would happen if we did try to do an instant approval request for an area that might be in this 0 approved airspace here, just so you don't get confused if you do try to request in that area. Again, you can still request for that area, but it usually takes about a week or so, which is a lot better again than the 90 to 120 days it did before. So let's go ahead and jump back over to Skyward.io and try to request an area in this 0, one of these 0 blocks. All right, so now we're back on the map of the Skyward.io website, and let's just zoom in here. Let's try to fly on one of these fields that's closer to the airport. I'm just gonna zoom in here and you can see an open field kind of right in this area. So let's go ahead and plan our flight area out there. So I'll select draw flight area, click on the square here, and I'm just gonna draw a square around this area. Let's go ahead and name this now. We'll call it Harrison Tutorial Flight 2 and go ahead and click Save. Now we can see that area saved there. Let's go back over here to Plan. And let's go ahead and give this operation a name. After we name it, let's go ahead and input a date and time again. So I'll just say on the 17th, and we'll do from 8 o'clock, and then over on the 17th again here till 10 o'clock. So another 2-hour time period. I'll select myself as a pilot in command, and I'll come here and click Save. Now let's go ahead and attach that flight area to this operation. So I'll come down here to select flight area. And when we do that, you'll see we have these 2 saved flight areas. We want to do Harrison Tutorial Flight number 2. That's the one that's closer to the airport. We'll go ahead and click Attach to Operation. Now when we do that, you'll see this looks a little bit different because we have a maximum altitude here of 0 feet, and our requested altitude currently is at 0, and you'll see it requires air traffic control review before this will be approved. Now when it is 0 here for maximum altitude, what I highly recommend for your requested altitude is either going to be at 100 feet or below, and preferably below if you can, but I have gotten them approved at 100 feet when I've typed that in before. So I'm just going to type in 100 right here. And when we do that, you're going to see it's going to pop up that we need to explain a reasoning for why we need an exception to this maximum altitude. And in this box here, you need to explain the drone flight and the drone operation that you're going to be conducting, like if it's for a business, for example. And you can usually just give a few quick sentences about your operation, and likely that will suffice. So I've just input a quick explanation. Again, this may not be quite enough information, but I do want to show you just what the request looks like. So now I'm going to come down here to request authorization. And when I click that, we're going to get that same notification about the Part 107 rules. I'm going to agree to those conditions and click agree. Now after I click agree, this is where it gets a little confusing because you'll see I get that notice of authorization, and when you see this you may think that you already got your instant approval when in reality, if we look over here at the FAA reference number, you're going to see it says pending air traffic control review. So after they review this, they will send you an email telling you if it has been approved or denied, and then you'll be able to go from there. And if it does get approved, you can come back here to Skyward.io and it will say it has been approved with that reference number attached to it. But again, this would take about a week or so, depending on the area you're requesting to fly in. All right guys, hopefully this tutorial gave you some information and insights into the new Lance program created by the FAA. If you have any questions about this tutorial, make sure you post those in the comments, and I'm going to check those regularly and answer any questions that I can. Don't forget, you can always check out other tutorials just like this one on the PremiumBeat blog. Again, this has been Charles Yeager for PremiumBeat. Thanks for watching.